100 hours per week. That's how much some people claim they work in consulting. Could this be true? Well, the short answer is no. You're not going to work 100 hours each week. But it's no 9-to-5 job either. So let's find out what's actually going on. First, we want to draw up a typical week at the MBB firms to give you a base case. There can be huge variations to this, but let's take it step by step. Typically, you fly in on Monday morning. Travel takes 3 hours. Then it's a normal day at the client and you work until 10 p.m. before you close your laptop. The next days start at 9 a.m. and you finish at 11 p.m. on Tuesday and midnight on Wednesday. Thursday is a bit different. You start at 9, but at around 6 p.m. you leave for the airport. After arriving at home at around 9 p.m., you put in maybe 1 hour more. Friday you may work from home or from the office. If everything goes well, you log off at 6 p.m. and you head into the weekend. Weekends are typically completely free for junior consultants, unless you prefer to push some non-urgent work into the weekend. Senior leaders such as partners do have the occasional phone call with the CEO on the weekend, but their job is more flexible anyways. Now, where do we end up with that schedule? If we add it all up, that's 67 hours in total. This is a completely typical week, nothing you'd hear complaints about. And you see, it's clearly way worse than your average job, but it's also better than many jobs in investment banking. Now, you may be wondering, is all of that productive work? How do you account for the time you spend traveling, lunch breaks, the commute from the client to the hotel, a team dinner, or even a client dinner? You see, that's quite a bit of time, 13 hours in our sample week. But usually, people wouldn't deduct that from the overall number because that time is still often work-related. Yeah, you might watch that Netflix show occasionally, on the plane or in the taxi, but more likely you'll be hunched over your laptop and produce slides. It's a stressful job after all. At dinners, you'll be talking about work a lot as well. And if a client is present, it goes without saying that it's a work event. So in our base case, we have 67 hours in which the job keeps you busy. But as we already said, the base case doesn't tell the whole story. There's actually huge variation. Let's take a closer look at a great week. In a great week, the starting times are the same, but you end much earlier. In this sample week, we work until 9 p.m. only once. The rest of the week we're done by 7 or 8. On Thursday, you head to the airport earlier at 4 p.m. and you don't do anything anymore once you arrive at home at 7. And on Fridays, you end at 5 p.m. This week comes to a total of 54 hours. Still sounds like a lot? Well, in consulting, it isn't. Compared to your average week, it's actually pretty chill. But what about the other end of the spectrum? What does a terrible week look like? Well, we got one for you right here. First off, we start each day at 8 a.m. Probably doesn't sound too bad to most of you, but you have to consider when you went to bed the night before. As you can see in a terrible week, working until 2 a.m. happens almost every night. Wednesday, it even gets close to an all-nighter, finishing at 4 a.m. In such a situation, 6 hours of sleep is the absolute maximum you'll get. Friday also ends late at 11 p.m. After such a week, you'll need the Saturday to recover and catch up on some sleep. But on Sunday, you're already back at it like a crack addict and put in most of your day. This week from hell gets you to a total of 100 hours. Do these weeks exist? Yes, they do. They don't happen a lot, but they happen. And that's pretty much our range. There can be weeks where you won't work much more than 50 hours, but there are also these disaster weeks with 100 hours or more. In our experience though, the 65 to 75 hour range is pretty realistic for most weeks. Okay, now that we have a sense for what's out there, let's talk about what influences work-life balance. And we have a couple of factors here. First, it's about which firm you work for. What we discussed so far describes the situation at McKinsey, BCG and Bain. Between the three, there isn't really a systematic difference. But compared to all the others, the MBB firms pride themselves in doing the most challenging projects, and they'll also put in the most hours. However, at strong tier 2 firms, you for sure won't work much less. At Big 4 advisory, it will be less, while for boutique firms, you can't generalize, they're all too different. The second thing that drives work-life balance is the region you work in. Without going into too much detail, we can say that you'll work hard everywhere, but you'll probably put in the least amount of hours in the Nordics and the most in East Asia. And whichever country we talk about, consulting hours are way above the country average. Third, it's about the industry that your consulting project is in. Again, we could discuss this at length, but the tendency is that you'll work hardest in sectors where the clients also work hard. Projects in banking or private equity are good candidates because those guys work very hard themselves. On the other end of the spectrum, you'll probably have public sector and government work. And fourth, it's about the type of project. Typically, you'll find lower working hours when your project is long running, if you do operations, and if you're focused on implementation. The tougher projects are the ones that are short and strategy focused. You may work directly with the CEO or you do a due diligence for a private equity fund, and that's when the pressure is on. All of these factors give you a little bit of a sense for what's driving the amount of hours. But we'd like to touch on one last topic, and that's red flags. Red flags are things about the project that increase the likelihood that your work-life balance will suck. If you identify such red flags in the staffing process, then you better take a hard look at the project again and see if you can still back out of it. First, it's a project for a new client. At McKinsey they call this a 001 study, the first project with a client. Now that you have your foot in the door, you obviously want to impress that client. That's the best way to secure follow-up work and a continuous project flow in the future. But to impress the client, you really have to over-deliver. The partner will push the team hard, and increasing the project scope along the way is completely normal. The second red flag is if your leadership is close to a promotion. A junior partner who's up for the partner election this year will not go 1 extra mile, he'll go 10 extra miles to impress the senior leadership. And that means his project teams will work overtime as well. Red flag number 3 is a junior team. If your project manager is managing a project for the first time, or if the other team members are very junior, prepare for a bumpy ride. What the team lacks in experience, it often has to make up for by putting in some extra hours. Number 4, your leadership is full of workaholics. If your partner or project manager always works super hard, you typically can't fully decouple yourself from that. So you better keep your ears open because word gets around pretty quickly about who's the biggest hard ass in the office. And red flag number 5 is about bad project scoping. With a little bit of experience, you'll develop a feel for what's possible with what kind of team, and where the partner has simply overpromised. If there's too much on the team's plate, or the firm has very little experience in a certain area, it's you who'll work long hours and do some deep digging to find all the right solutions. Okay, so those are just a couple of obvious red flags. If the project sounds so interesting that you still want to do it, go for it. But don't come complaining to us afterwards. We warned you. So there you have it. That's our perspective on working hours in consulting and everything that drives it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and activate the bell for more content like this. Let us know in the comments below if you have any questions or if there's a topic you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching and we'll catch you in the next one.